Hey folks, this is Dr. Franklin, and this is a presentation entitled What is the Psychology of Religion? So we'll start off with that basic question: what is the psychology of religion, and why does it matter? Here's a simple way to answer that. If psychology is the scientific study of mental behavior and processes, then the psychology of religion is simply that same scientific lens turned toward religious behavior and religious processes, how people think, feel, and act in relation to what they consider sacred. Religion is one of the most powerful social forces in the modern world, for better and for worse. It addresses universal human needs, questions about mortality, suffering, meaning, and moral order. It creates thick social bonds through shared ritual, shared belief, and shared sacred space. Sociologist Emile Durkheim called the feeling this produces collective effervescence, a felt sense of unity that transcends the individual. Think of the energy in a packed church during a Sunday revival, or the unified motion of the crowd during the Hajj in Mecca. Religion also legitimizes social norms, provides identity and belonging, mobilizes people to act, and transmits itself across generations, touching family structure, politics, law, art, education, and economics all at once. From a psychological angle, religion is deeply personal. People often experience it as a source of comfort, control, meaning, and closeness to the sacred. Consider the range of people shaped by religious conviction. Swedish diplomat Dag Hammarskjöld, civil rights leader El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the 14th Dalai Lama. Four very different public figures, four very different traditions, each profoundly shaped by religious conviction and pursuit of change. Religion even shapes comedy. Think of Jackie Mason, whose humor was inseparable from his Jewish identity. Religion has also been implicated in some of the darkest human behavior. Andrea Yates, a mother and former school teacher, murdered her 5 children and was found not guilty by reason of insanity. She stated she believed they were not righteous according to her understanding of the Christian faith. Muhammad Atta, one of the pilots and organizers of the September 11th attacks, was motivated by a violent strain of Islamist jihadi ideology and was responsible, with his co-conspirators, for nearly 3,000 deaths. Different faiths, different countries, wildly different outcomes. But in both cases, religion determined, directed, or colored central aspects of these individual choices. Whether we're looking at global affairs, intergroup conflict, health behavior, or the basic human search for happiness and fulfillment, we cannot fully explain human behavior without accounting for religion, or its absence. Given how central religion is to human life, how do scholars actually define it? I think that's a valid question. This turns out, though, to be surprisingly contested. William James emphasized the feelings, acts, and experiences of individuals in solitude, how a person stands in relation to the divine. So picture someone praying alone in a quiet moment of crisis. Emile Durkheim emphasized religion as a social force, a unified system of beliefs and practices shared by a community organized around sacred things. Kenneth Pargament emphasized the search for significance connected to the sacred, the ongoing human project of finding what truly matters. Spirituality refers to the search for the sacred and a relationship with an ultimate concern that feels personally meaningful. Religion adds organization and rites on top of that, ritual, institutional, or codified spirituality, shaped and sanctioned by culture. Put simply, spirituality is the search itself, and religion is the structured communal container that search often takes. As Raymond Paluchin notes, while researchers need to operationalize their terms, not much is gained by rigidly committing to one single definition of religion across the field. The diversity of definitions reflects how multifaceted the phenomenon really is. Psychologists of religion broadly study 3 things: why religious ideas exist in the first place, how religious impulses express themselves in behavior, and how effective religion is, its measurable impact on well-being and behavior. Think of the psychology of religion as a subfield of religious studies, approached from a secular scientific angle, in contrast to theology, which operates within and in service of particular traditions' commitments. Because the subject matter is so complex, researchers increasingly draw on interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary approaches. To comprehensively assess someone's religious commitment, Charles Glock and Rodney Stark identified 5 dimensions: experiential, which is the subjective religious feeling, like closeness to the divine during prayer; ideological, beliefs a tradition expects followers to hold, such as a belief in the resurrection; intellectual, the knowledge of one's own tradition's core teachings; ritualistic, practices like prayer, sacraments, fasting, or dietary rules such as kosher or halal; and consequential, the real-world secular effects religion is expected to produce. A person can score high on some dimensions and low on others, though research shows these dimensions tend to correlate fairly strongly. Psychologist Vasilis Saraglou offers another lens: 4 categories of religiousness: believing, bonding, behaving, and belonging. This echoes Glock and Stark's dimensions, organized slightly differently, which is a reminder that psychologists often approach the same underlying complexity from different angles, not necessarily disagreeing about the substance. Together, these frameworks let psychologists identify real-world psychological, social, medical, political, and moral correlates of religious belief and practice, exactly the territory this course will explore. Why does psychology of religion research generate so much controversy? Well, psychologists as a group tend to be more personally skeptical of religion than the general population, even though a researcher's personal beliefs shouldn't determine how fairly they evaluate evidence. Some critics argue researchers let their own convictions improperly influence findings. Others raise a methodological concern that religion resists adequate study using conventional research tools. Many believers push back too, arguing psychologists are broadly hostile to faith, or that religious truths lie entirely beyond the reach of the scientific method. Despite this friction, the field continues to grow. Researchers are still asking whether the grand theories of Freud, Jung, Maslow, and others can meaningfully illuminate religious belief and practice, which is exactly where we're headed in Chapter 2, and still wrestling with how researchers should handle their own religious commitments when doing this work. That tension between studying religion rigorously and studying it fairly is one we'll return to throughout the course. Next, we will talk about the classic theorists who first tried to make sense of religion scientifically. We'll start with William James.